Good evening, Sigma Chi brothers, sweethearts, and guests, and welcome to the latest event in our signature series titled Journey Through History, a Founders Day Celebration. And this event is brought to you by the Sigma Chi Learning Consortium. My name is Mike Church. I'm a 2005 graduate from the University of Illinois, and I'm the Executive Director of Sigma Chi International Fraternity. I am so thrilled to welcome you tonight to a very, very, very special event. We are celebrating Sigma Chi's 169th birthday and our 169th Founders Day. And this promises to be both educational and inspirational. We are so thrilled tonight to welcome Brother Michael Codina, MD, he's a cardiologist, UC San Diego, 1993, and he's our 22nd Grand Historian. And Brother Eric Hansen, Cincinnati, 1989, our 20th Grand Historian. They are the only two living men to have held the office of Grand Historian, and collectively have served in that office for almost 20 years. Tonight, Sigma Chi's preeminent historical experts will guide you through a captivating virtual tour of the Sigma Chi Museum, will provide expert commentary on our rich history, our cherished traditions, and the enduring legacy of our brotherhood, all in honor of the seven men who cast the original vision that would become Sigma Chi. Before we get started, I just want to extend the invitation for any of our viewers to ask questions of our panelists tonight by using the comment and chat feature. At the end of our interview tonight, we'll take questions from the audience as time permits. So without further ado, let's welcome Brother Mike Codina and Brother Eric Hansen, and let's dive right in. So tonight is June 27th, 2024. And 169 years ago, our seven men, our seven founders, sat in a room together on High Street in Oxford, Ohio, on the eve of what would be the announcement of Sigma Chi to the world. Just 6 months prior to that, those seven men had a debate with their fellow Deke members. There were 12 men in that Deke chapter. There were 6 of them. We all know that founder Lockwood was added later. And so the issue was over who would be the poet to the literary society. And there was a schism in the chapter. I think all of us who joined Sigma Chi know that story. So we'll fast forward maybe through the details of it. But in February of 1855, those 6 men met with the other 6 men in Deke, and that was the infamous moment where Brother Runkle threw down the badge and, of course, cast the infamous quote of Sigma Chi. And in April of 1855 was when those 6 men were formally excommunicated, if you will, or expelled from Deke, leaving them just 2 months where they would cast the future vision for what would become Sigma Chi. They enlisted the help of James Carter Beard over that time. He was a friendly Deke who lived in the room adjacent to them on High Street, and helped them craft the Sigma Chi badge and sent the order off for 7 Sigma Chi badges. By this time, they had added William Lewis Lockwood to their founding class, and 7 men got together on the day of commencement day, June 28th, 1855. So what I want to start with tonight is Brother Mike Codina and Brother Eric Hansen to provide us insights into what the founders might have been thinking on a night just like this, 169 years ago. What was going through the hearts and minds of our 7 founders as they prepared for the next day to publicly walk onto the streets in Oxford, Ohio, and announce that Sigma Chi had arrived. We'll start with Brother Eric Hansen. Give us some insights.
All right. One of the reflections that we know of comes to us from a letter that Ben Runkle had written in 1879 to the alumni of the Gamma chapter, and he basically the reason I like it is because he's had time to think, he's had time to articulate and like coalesce the idea of that founding. He said the Sigma Chi was not the offspring of chance or the creature of mere boyish fancy. It was the child of rebellion, honorable rebellion, which success has dignified into a revolution. So what I take away from his thoughts was that, okay, yes, they had a schism with Deke. They had this ability to not to basically be able to pull away and to create what they thought a fraternity should be, but they were doing it not maliciously. And I love his use of the word honorable rebellion. And to me, that kind of elevates the reasons why they founded Sigma Chi in the first place.
Well said. Brother Codina, give us the insights. What was going through the founders' minds and hearts? These are 14 to 25-year-old men. They're putting the Sigma Phi badge on, of course, Sigma Phi as we were founded for the very first time. What's going through their minds?
So, it's to kind of go along with what Eric had said. I think the one word that I kind of think about is calculated. I mean, I really think this was not, like, as Eric mentioned, this wasn't some sort of flight of fancy, that this was really a calculated move to start what they wanted, what they thought a fraternity should be. And so, as much as there's on one side this sort of calculated, very mental approach to it, I think in Runkle's We 7 speech that he gave in 1908, the one thing that he said is the one thing they did know is they loved each other. And so it's sort of that combination of this very calculated move of the mind, but also this very thoughtful, emotional thought of the heart. So I think that those two things together were probably going through their minds at, on June 27th, 1855.
Awesome. Thank you both for setting the stage with us. And as we celebrate 169 years of our fraternity tomorrow, we look forward to welcoming all of those celebrations that are happening around the country to celebrate, and in Canada too. There's around our continent, we're having celebrations. This is a wonderful thing. So look up. All of you should have received an email today from the headquarters, giving you guidance of where to go for those events that are happening around the continent to celebrate Founders Day. But if you're here tonight and you want to celebrate Founders Day and you can't make it to any of the events, there's 3 things you can do tomorrow to celebrate with us. You can fly your Sigma Chi flag, you can wear your Sigma Chi badge, and if you can't do either of those things, just call a friend, just call a Sigma Chi brother you haven't chatted with in a while, and just say, hey man, it's good to connect with you again. Anyway, let's dive right into it, to the reason we're here tonight, which is to explore our museum, to celebrate our history, and to learn from our esteemed panelists tonight. So let me set the stage for what we're about to see here. In 2013, it was a holiday weekend in the fall of 2013. I was still a young employee on staff, and it was a Monday morning or Tuesday morning. I think Monday was a holiday. Tuesday morning, we were coming into the office, and I got a call from a fellow staff member who said to me, "Hey, there's some water on the floor, and the second floor of the north wing of the building." And this is, before FaceTime and everything else. I'm on my cell phone. And I said, well, get some towels and clean it up. And he said to me, it's a lot of water. And when I got to the building that day, there was literally rain coming. There was water coming down the walls of the building into the basement, from the second floor into the basement. The basement of the headquarters was where we kept our significant SIG museum. And on the south wing was where we had the Museum of Sigma Chi. Unfortunately, what had happened over the weekend was a pipe had busted on the second floor, and it effectively created water damage throughout the entire north wing of the building. That event set in motion a series of events that ultimately ended up with us creating the new Sigma Chi Museum, the Chuck and Kim Watson Museum of Sigma Chi at our international headquarters. Brother Mike and Eric were part of the team that built that museum. And I see that Brother Lee Beecham has joined us tonight too, past Grand Consul Lee Beecham, our 63rd Grand Consul. And he was the chair of that illustrious group of men, or as he might say, he was the one who had the unfortunate task of wrangling all of them to come to some sort of consensus. Welcome, Lee. We're glad you're here with us, brother. So, Brother Mike, that's setting the stage for how we came to have the new museum as it was and unveiled in 2016. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on the work of the committee and sort of the efforts that you undertook to create what would become the Chuck and Kim Watson Museum of Sigma Chi?
Yeah. So none of us have built a museum before, so we had no idea how to make this happen, right? And so we kind of had, at least I think we all individually started thinking about how we wanted to make this happen. And I think what it started with was a vision, and maybe that vision wasn't so concrete, but I think in the back of our minds we had an idea about what we wanted the museum to be. And we were first, again, anything in Sigma Chi, you got to form the committee. So we got a committee together, and then from the committee, we were looking at companies that would help us achieve our goals. And so one of the companies that we looked at was a company in Dayton, Ohio, maybe Exhibit Concepts, maybe that was their name. And they just so happened to have a guy who worked for them named Jerry Spangler. And I don't know if we did not know this at the time, but Jerry is a Sigma Chi, and he was from the University of Dayton chapter, which no longer exists. But nonetheless, Jerry, who at the time was one of these guys who probably would have said I was a Sigma Chi, but he got on board and really, truly helped us create the vision that became the museum that you all have seen or could see or will see a little bit tonight virtually. And the great thing for me in that situation is I think for Jerry, it kind of brought him back into the fold of the fraternity. And a few years later, it became a significant SIG. And so I think this was a great opportunity for Jerry to do his job, but not only do his job, but to help us create something that is truly special. For me, the biggest challenge was I had some understanding of the space that the museum was going to take. And there's no way, there is absolutely no way that we can make this happen. The space is too small. But nonetheless, we move forward. Jerry said, no, everything's going to be fine. And so again, meeting after meeting after meeting to plan this. And I think the first question that we asked as the committee is, what is the theme of, again, I think every museum should have a theme. And if you go back and you look at what we had before, it really had no theme. And those who knew the museum and the basement of headquarters, it was just a collection of artifacts. And we wanted to tell the story of the fraternity. We sort of decided a chronological approach would probably be the best way to do it. And so that's kind of the theme of the museum in somewhat of a chronological order. From the founding and talking a little bit about pre-founding and then the founders and then specific events along the way, but still sort of had a timeline kind of idea. And then the next question is, well, then what do we need to have in the museum to tell the story? So I think it was more about finding items that help tell the story more than telling the story of the items. And so really everything I think was thoughtful. There were obviously some things that you had to include, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about those things tonight. But again, at meeting after meeting, planning after planning, when it was all said and done, this museum appeared that was, oddly enough, exactly what I had in mind for me personally, even though I didn't know it. So Jerry was able to pull that out of us in such a way that was truly amazing. And so it's actually changed how I view, if I'm going to a museum or whatever, you can tell museums that are really thoughtfully done, where they tell the story of whatever it is they want to tell, and museums that are just a bunch of stuff. And clearly this is not just a bunch of stuff. This is a very curated set of objects that help us tell our story.
Yeah, and
well, thank you for that. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I wrote at the top of my little notes here that it is not a county museum of old stuff. Remember, we wanted so hard to get away from that kind of cabinet of curiosity kind of thing, and I think what we came up with was this inspirational journey that helps connect us to the past. And through telling our story through these objects. And you're absolutely right. And I have no idea how Lee was able to wrangle four grand historians into picking out things that can help us actually tell that particular story. So,
yeah, no, absolutely. He's like a ringleader, like a circus leader, and sometimes, and no, but he and it's good because we all have a mindset as far from the historical perspective,
right,
that Lee, I think, was able to kind of like distance himself from and keep us onto task. Because you could imagine when you start thinking 4 historians in a room start talking about history, you're going to get off topic pretty quickly. And so Lee was really able to kind of keep us all in line and keep us to task. Maybe nobody could have done it as well as Lee did.
That's true.
Well, and I don't want to underestimate the effort, because it was a 2-year effort from our first meeting till the grand opening of the actual museum, and numerous iterations. And as you'll see in a little bit, a lot of words, a lot of written narrative. If you're telling a story, and for me, that was a struggle, because you're talking to Jerry about, hey, I got this great idea for telling the story, and he's just like, too many words. You have a certain amount of time that a consumer is going to spend in front of an exhibit to actually get into that exhibit. Now, the beautiful thing about Jerry was, well, why don't we turn that into a multimedia piece? Why don't we turn that into an audio piece? And so as you'll be able to see here in a couple minutes, not only was there, were we doing it chronologically, but we were trying to make the portions of the museum as you wander through it interactive and not boring. Put it that way. When you come in, I got to read this, and I got to read this, and I got to read this. No, you're able to touch and feel and to look and to experience what Sigma Chi is.
Yeah, and to kind of talk a little bit more about that, I think everything in the museum is there for a reason. Everything was thought about. There's no mistakes. Everything was thought about. And again, there's a perfect example of that when we talk about when we are in front of the founders section of the museum. And I'll mention a comment at that time, but it was a deliberate action to make sure that this was as multimedia as it can be. Whenever we can do video, whenever we could do audio, whenever we could do something that's going to be more than just looking at something, we're going to certainly try to do that. And so again, that was really thought out extremely well. And, Jerry really helped us through that process.
All right. Wonderful. I think it's, as we get into, I'm going to ask Brother Hansen to kind of walk us through a virtual tour of the museum with our behind the scenes administrators here in just a second. But before we get there, I just also want to give a shout out to the other people that were really the heavy lifters behind the committee as well. And that's, we've obviously talked about the chairman of that, our 63rd Grand Consul, Lee Beecham. The other committee members that were really instrumental in the process were, of course, our 19th Grand Historian, our 62nd Grand Consul, Doug Carlson, and our 21st Grand Historian, Bill Fleming. And then I would certainly be remiss if we didn't offer appreciation to the Sigma Chi Foundation for their leadership in the financial component of this, and to Brother Chuck Watson and his wife Kim Watson for their lead gift in making the financial component of this museum construction possible. So all of the work of the Sigma Chi Museum was privately funded by individual contributors. I think all of us here were part of the gift process for that. But all of the things that we do in this organization are part of the decisions that are made by individual members of this organization to support it. And so all of those members of Sigma Chi who contributed financially to make this happen, as well as those members who volunteered their time and energies, we're so grateful and so indebted to you This truly is, I think, a gem in the interfraternal space in terms of museums, and we're blessed to be able to share it with you all tonight. So without further ado, go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Mike, just not forget Noah Phelps too.
Yep. That's correct. I'm sorry. Archivist Noah Phelps was hugely instrumental in that process in terms of his support of the committee and making his own contributions to the effort as well. So I was blessed to just kind of to just grab onto the coattails of these guys and be along for the ride. I get to take all the credit because I get to be at the headquarters every day. Anyway, let's dive in. Time is limited tonight. Let's do about a 15-20 minute overview. I'm gonna turn it over to Eric. You get the joystick. You get to walk us through the museum and tell that story that you and Brother Codina had talked through. And I know Michael offered some color commentary along the way. I'm gonna get out of your way and let you two do your thing, and I'll be back at the end to help navigate questions and such. Thank you, brothers.
Perfect.
Hey, first of all, if yes, it's a virtual tour. It's online like this. But if you ever get a chance to make it to Evanston, it is worth spending the 2 hours plus to keep going back in finding things. So, with that being said, what's the first thing you see when you walk in? It's a matter of principle. Now, it's that front panel right there, and what we have is we have a table, and if you look at the panel behind it, that's the scene that was sketched by Milton Caniff of Runkle throwing his badge down on that fateful February night, saying, "I didn't join this fraternity to be any man's tool." And the beautiful thing about this display is, in that table, under that plexiglass, resides the original Cooper Sigma Phi badge. And can you put a picture? It's right there. So we start off by having a connection directly back to our founders with the original relic. It's guys, you can't steal it. It's under lock and key. There's alarms galore, but it is right there. And we thought, what a perfect way to set the tone for the museum when you walk in and you see a piece like that. And then, of course, on the right-hand side of that display, we talk about the Miami Triad, and we have some examples of some other badges there. But the idea, Leslie, you want to go to the left here? Go to our founders display, because what a better way to kind of lay the foundation in a chronological order than to have this beautiful founders display. You see seven display boxes, if you will, along with these wonderful columns that have each name on it, and this beautiful black framed video screen. Mike, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time discussing the order of these names of the founders and how we wanted those to look, because typically if we go from left to right, we think of do we do it in the order of the seven virtues? Do we do it in the order? So we really thought about that. And do we do Runkle first? And so that's the kind of detail that we were. So we thought, where Scobie is, could that be Runkle? And we just do seven that way. But we actually thought we're going to do something a little bit different, so that you see the names differently than what you normally kind of think about them in some sort of an order. And so we'll get into a little bit of detail of what each of these are. But again, this is a very good example of our audio-visual thing, because again, we'll find out when you touch each of those little black bars, you will hear a founder.
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and do that right now? Can we do that?
Sure.
Yeah.
You will doubtless create quite a sensation when you first put on the dear old cross. In whatever part of the U.S. you may go, you will find not handsomer pins, and I trust and hope that those emblems of purity will be indices of the purity and nobleness of the hearts beneath them. We should endeavor so to raise ourselves that to say of a man, he is a Sigma Chi, shall be synonymous with, he is a liberally educated, high-minded, pure, and noble man. Such are some of the objects of our society. The world is in grave need of just such men. And let all who go out from our chapters be such men.
You know, I've read that letter a number of times, and it gives me goosebumps. To think about how young Lockwood was when he wrote that 1857 letter, and that was part of the committee had to audition voice actors. We narrowed down and got to the actual written sentiments that each of the founders we were going to portray on audio, but we wanted the voice actors to be kind of close to the age of when they actually wrote that. So some of the other ones, like Cooper's a lot older, and so we have an older gentleman doing Cooper. But it was a really neat process where we went through and auditioned these voice actors for this particular display.
Yeah, again, nothing by chance. Everything was calculated and was there to serve a purpose.
Right. Now, one of the things, Leslie, can we just show real quick some of these exhibits close up? Okay, this is an exhibit from Scobie. We showed some of his writings, some of his photographs, some of the older material there. Of course, he also died rather young, and then go ahead. Of course, Jordan, an original copy of his 1884 address to the Grand Chapter in Cincinnati, and that beautiful daguerreotype type. Here's there's Founder Bell with our first Grand Consul Macmillan, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say the difficulty at times was trying to find things that fit what we wanted to do. And you can see certain founders have more objects and more items than some of the others. And so, if you think back to Scobie, that was copies of his writings from the Kappa record, which was the collection of correspondence back and forth between Alpha Chapter and photographs. So there wasn't much tangible items that we have from Scobie. We have a bit more from Runkle. We have quite a bit more from Cooper. Obviously, we have his badge. Caldwell, we have a few things. And so, again, I think we'll show some of the other things, and you can see a little bit more tangible things in some of the other cases.
That was Runkle. This is Lockwood, and one of the interesting things, that little diary right there's the Civil War diary we have of William Lewis Lockwood. He was also a prolific artist, and you see some of his sketches from his college notebooks in the back there.
Are you going to talk about the gun?
What about the gun?
I mean, that's kind of an interesting. What's that? What's that about? Actually, I think he took a trip to Paris after graduation, and he carried that with him. Yeah. It's interesting because being the first of the founders to die, really, 12 years after the founding, to have these objects, which is even more than some of the founders who passed away later on in life, I think is just an incredible testament to what his family knew that Lockwood felt about the fraternity.
Absolutely. Good old Dan Cooper. And that's a 1905 medallion. And the reason we have a mirror there is because it's engraved on the back. And of course, he was the last founder to enter the chapter eternal. I love seeing their old handwriting, the way they communicated, just tremendous connection to the past. And of course, Jimmy Caldwell. And that is Jimmy Caldwell's actual Sigma Chi badge, whom our current Grand Proconsul wears a replica of that actual badge. And then also, we also have a diary of his from the Civil War era as well. Okay, so really, that is where we kind of leave the founders, and then our discussions went over. Yeah, go to the right there to the principles, and if you could pull this up, this was a very, very important part of how we wanted to communicate and articulate our standards, values, and ideals. And we spent a lot of time going through this piece, identifying the standards by which we accept bids from people, which we invite our potential brothers to come in. The Jordan standard, the Sigma Chi creed, the spirit of Sigma Chi, all these that we believe in and we profess. That is what we're seeking in our individuals to become members. And then we move up in our principled architecture, as Doug would say, Brother Carlson, to our values, which are reflective of the 7 virtues, and get into that more behavioral kind of thing that we expect of ourselves. And then we jump, of course, on top are our ideals, which we're constantly striving for. That's where we put Constantine. That's where we put the story of the White Cross. And how it ties back to our heraldry, and Runkle's inspiration for that, being a leader of men. So this, again, a lot of words, but we felt as a committee it was very, very important to our story to lay the foundation so that when not only brothers, but when non-members come in, they can also understand what it is that we are about. So, and we can move on. We have a little display here regarding Sigma Chi in the Civil War, with quite a few artifacts. That happens to be General Runkle's uniform, along with some of the swords. I believe one of those swords is Lockwood's sword. Just again, some artifacts that help us tell the story of our brotherhood in the Civil War. There were 10 active chapters at the time. There were basically we were split down the middle. 118 brothers fought on the south. Basically 260 fought for the north. But we wanted to tell the story. And Leslie, if you turn completely around on the back side of the coming together panel, has the story of the biennial convention in the December of 1866, and it has the members from the South that actually attended that convention, and it was the first time, and even recognized from discussions with past Grand Consul John Graham, that the unification of the fraternity occurred, much like the actual nation itself. The brothers there were welcomed with warm arms, outstretched arms, and they left with their dignity, which was a true testament to our fraternity. Let's go ahead and move on.
Eric,
yes.
Before we go back, looking at the artifacts that we have for the Civil War exhibit, just a little point. That's not Runkle's Civil War uniform. That's a uniform that he had when he was professor of military sciences at either Miami University or the University of Maine. So that's a little bit later on, but the famous Tiffany sword of Lockwood is there. I think that's Runkle's sword that belongs to this particular uniform. But what's also interesting is a couple of years ago, so long after the museum was finished, we got a phone call. Noah actually took an email from a family member of Lockwood who said she had some of his things. And of course, we were all kind of wondering, ooh, is there a little, white cross pin there, something like that, but unfortunately his badge was not there. But what was there was buttons from his uniform. And so, as we'll probably talk about at some point, we'd like to think our museum here is not a stagnant thing, and that, at some point when we decide to, upgrade the museum with small little improvements, we can add those buttons either to his case over what you guys already saw, or into this case right here.
All right, let's keep moving. Let's go down to the badges, and Mike, you can do an explanation on this one.
Yeah, so I think first of all, I'll say the design of this case actually I was inspired by a case I saw at it was a natural history museum in Salt Lake City that had a display of arrowheads. And I saw that, and I really liked the way that looked. They were each, basically off the board with a metal, a piece of metal, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, a metal thing that kept it off of it and just suspended it right there. So it's like these badges were kind of suspended in air, and I think that was a little bit more difficult for us to do. But what we decided is to do something like this, which, gives you that feeling that you're looking at each one individually. And of course, on the sides, you have the description of each of the badges. They're in somewhat of a chronological order. The top badge there is from a charter member of Omicron chapter, Alfred Mullins, 1857 or 58, 59 maybe. And then they go down from there. And so these are really all the nicest badges that we have in the fraternity. We have others that have been donated that are in a safe at headquarters. But really, this is a nice collection of and examples of what the badge looked like, and the evolution of the badge through the years. Got it.
Okay, for sake of time, we're gonna move a little faster through. Over on the right is our military Sigma Chi display, and you can see we went back through and I've identified those Gold Star brothers that in the conflicts, and along have also by name and chapter put them on the Gold Star honor roll there. A very fitting tribute to our brothers in the service. We have a couple displays. We have a display on the Order of Constantine. We have
Eric.
Yes.
I know that we're trying to move fast, but I think a really important point to go back to the military.
Okay.
Again, we thought about the stars, and again, when we said we thought about everything.
Yep.
So each star represents one brother, and as we know, the world is moving on. We even have spaces for future brothers who are going to give their lives in the service of this country, so we can honor them in that way. And the dark stars there represent the future Sigma Chi's who will give their lives for our country.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Now, this portion of the museum, we tell the story about our philanthropy. We tell our story about our leadership programs. We don't only celebrate our certain events like our sesquicentennial or Diamond Jubilee and things like that. But as you know, we also wanted to talk about some of the not so exciting parts of our fraternity in terms of things like our membership selection issues and the ability for us to make some values-based decisions for the brothers that came before us to kind of, get us into and get us moving forward in terms of our membership selection. So that story is actually told here as well. Some artifacts from John Glenn or John Young. Anyway, anniversary celebrations, again, multimedia with different film from the different types of celebrations, the sesquicentennial, the semi-centennial, and all that kind of stuff. The last thing I wanted to show is the end wall here. And if you remember, we started with the founders, and at the very end of this timeline, the last 11 names of brothers on this wall are the brothers that lost their lives during 9/11. And so it really comes full circle. You can see when your chapters are there, the different grand chapters. We've kind of built out a little bit of length. We're pushing, this museum's going to be 10 years old in 2 years, right? And we're going to have to go ahead and kind of redo some stuff. And then on the flip side of this, on the other side, is a space that we kept for a traveling exhibit. Things that we could if we had a collection of something or other, like maybe lighters or rings or whatever, we could showcase this for a little period of time and then have it switch out after that to keep people coming back, keep them interested. But that, in a nutshell, is the overall tour, and then you're back out into headquarters. I know we wanted to save some time for some questions, or heck, I'll turn it back over to Mike Church. Is he still here? There he is.
I'm enjoying the show, just watching you guys talk. It's always fun. One of my favorite parts of working from the headquarters is when brothers come in and I have time to walk them through the museum and point out my favorite pieces. And so I really enjoy hearing the two of you talk about the process and talk about your favorite pieces and things of that sort. So I think it's really appropriate that we spend some time taking questions from the audience. So I've got a few here in the chat. So let's start with Zach Volk. Are there any living descendants of the founders? And so I'm going to ask you two first. I do know that we just covered this recently on social media for the fraternity, but go ahead and dive right in. Let's start with Brother Codina, our grand historian.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, was it the great grandson of founder Lockwood was initiated at San Diego State Delta Xi chapter, I think in the fall, which again was an event that made news for Sigma Chi. His father, Lockwood's great grandson. So this must be his great grandson. His great grandson is also a Sigma Chi. So there is a bit of a family legacy on the Lockwood side of things.
Absolutely. We know of a few others, but not that who have been initiated into the fraternity. I think those are the two that we are aware of who are living today and members of the fraternity as well. Let's go to. I'm just going to real quick answer a question from Kelly Goss, who asked, since we are international brothers who give their life for their respective country, and the short answer is yes, of course. We are an international fraternity, and our Gold Star honor roll is not, of course, limited to one particular country. So, if you know names of your fellow countrymen, whatever country you're from, who are Sigma Chi's who've given their life in service to their country's military, we want to know about it and add them to our Gold Star honor roll.
We do have a running list currently. So, unfortunately.
All right. Well, let's while we get an opportunity for other questions to come in, why don't we dive into this question here? Let's talk about the design of the badge. And I know that each of you have your own kind of spin on this, as we've talked about before. But how did we land on this process of the badge? What are you aware of relative to that process? What insights can you share about the process our founders went through to ultimately land on what we have today and have had since 1855, except that change from Sigma Phi to Sigma Chi, of course?
I'm going to defer to the badge expert there.
All right. So I think, first of all, I'd probably start off and say there's not a lot written about the thoughts that went into the decision to say, like, well, you know, what symbols do we want to use, other than what they attributed the meaning of each of those symbols was. And so, again, the meanings haven't changed a whole lot from the original descriptions of the badge. And again, as Mike had alluded to earlier, James Carter Beard, who was a guy who was sympathetic to the founders but remained a Deke, was an artist, and he helped create the badge. One of the interesting
I was going to say, one of the most unique things about it is the shape of that badge. It was totally contrary to anything in the Greek world at that time, and that kind of set it apart from the other fraternities.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because at that point you had the diamond-shaped badge of fraternities like Deke and Psi Upsilon. You had monogram badges like Sigma Phi, the original Sigma Phi, or Chi Psi, or some of those other Eastern fraternities. You had shields, Phi Kappa Psi, Phi Delta Theta. Beta's badge is still kind of a shield. But the cross was something completely unique in the Greek world at that time. And again, that was not by mistake. The interesting thing, and we probably don't have time to discuss it now, but when they were debating the name change of the fraternity, they also debated changing the symbols on the badge as well. And so when they came up with some alternate symbols, the one symbol that remained the same between the two badges, and the only one that remained the same, was the literary scroll. And so I think that probably tells you what the founders really thought of that idea about learning. And so that would have been the same. The mystery that I have about the badge is the 7 stars. And so I don't know why they picked 7. Obviously, we attribute the 7 stars to the 7 founders, the 7 virtues, but they didn't. There were no 7 virtues at the time. And I don't see that they would have thought about themselves in such a way to say, well, there's 7 of us, so let's put 7 stars.
Yeah,
I just don't think they would have done that. Is it just that it fits nicely in that area? So again, I just don't know. That is a big mystery to me. So if we can have a seance and bring up the spirits of the founders at some point to ask them that question, I think that would be one that I would really like to know, is what was the original intention of 7? Again, are we thinking too hard about it? And like you said, does 7 just fit nicely, 4 and 3, in that tapered arm on the lower part of the cross? I don't know. If anybody has any thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Anyone's guess is, I think, as good as another at this point in time, right? Brother Hansen, let's pause it. Let's pump a question over to you. What's one item that got cut from the construction of the museum that you really wanted in there, but as Brother Codina mentioned, space was tight and you had to make some cuts? What was something that didn't make the cut?
Well, it's interesting because we have quite a bit of material from the early 20th century. Even 30s, 40s, that kind of time frame. And we actually have an extensive collection of sketches from Milton Caniff, the Ohio State Sigma Chi, who did Terry and the Pirates, and then went on to do Steve Canyon. We have original poster boards of his cartoons there. And I think what we ended up settling on, though, was an oil painting of his depicting the Constantine chapter. That is one of very, very few oil paintings that he ever did. So we're blessed to actually have that in the possession of the fraternity. But I think that period is kind of wanting in the actual museum.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that was the period where you see Sigma Chi evolve into its modern day sort of representation of what it has become, away from sort of the early years of the inception days, where we're just trying to figure it all out together. Lots and lots and lots of cool stuffs in our archives available for that. Speaking of our archives, Brother Codina, might you talk a little bit about the Sigma Chi archives, the Douglas R. Carlson archives of Sigma Chi that we have at the headquarters, just to kind of give us a little, just maybe 2 minutes of what's in the archives.
Yeah. So, we have much more to offer than what's in the museum, and we need a place to keep it. And we have a room. I think we have, there we go. We have, let's go to the other picture of that to kind of show. So this is a split picture. So there's a safe on one side, but where that brown door is forward, that's looking into the archive space. And so each one of those boxes on the left is either a subject file or a chapter file. So when we talk about the files that are at headquarters about your chapter, this is what we're talking about. I think the files on the right are copies of the magazines through the years. There's something behind that that's related to Grand Chapter. And then if you go through the door and to the left around that shelf right there, you'll go back and see this little black safe that's there. And so in there are some really precious and somewhat valuable artifacts of the fraternity that, again, we try to, this is a temperature controlled room. We really try to keep it as secure as we can. And again, there's some great stuff in there. Some of the stuff that didn't make the museum, if you would ask me the question, what got cut, I would have said there's some great sports items that we have. We have a 1940s Cincinnati Reds complete uniform that was actually on display at the Cincinnati Reds Museum, because they don't have anything older than that in their museum. And so Bill Werber, who was I think a member of the Duke chapter, played for the New York Yankees. Before he died, he had the honor of being Babe Ruth's last surviving teammate. And so it would have been great to have Bill Werber's uniform there. Obviously things from Mike Ditka, from Erlen Olsen, some others, legendary sports figures for the fraternity, Drew Brees, those guys. It would have been great to have something to display there. And who knows, maybe we need to, get it together and put that in that traveling section right there, put together a display of our sports memorabilia.
Just a real quick story on Billy Werber. I was living in Cincinnati at the time. I was talking with them, letting them know that we had it, and we we're trying to figure out the legal way that we could do it. And I was talking to Noah, and I said, "Hey Noah, how do we go about doing this?" And he just said, "Well, why don't you call Bill Werber up and ask him?" And so one of my favorite times as a historian, I got to interview Billy Werber. He was 99 at the time, and he was still living, still sharp as a tack. It was wonderful. Go, oh yeah, that's sure. Awesome. So anyway,
that's awesome.
That's great. That's actually how we have all these items from the museum. Is literally one Sigma guy just asked another one and said, "Can we have this stuff in the museum?" And that's how we end up with all these things. So, great question in the chat here too is, how can our members or our alumni contribute to preserving and expanding the museum collection?
So, I'll say it's important to have historical artifacts even locally. And so I think we've, as a fraternity, I've always kind of taken on the policy that it doesn't need to be at headquarters as long as it's well taken care of and we know what it is. And so I'll kind of roundabout answer the question. If you've got really historically interesting things in your own chapters, keep them there, preserve them, and display them in such a way that that honors that particular item. If you don't feel you can do that, we would be happy. Noah would be happy to take care of that and archive it. And so I suppose we all should be on the lookout for historical Sigma Chi artifacts. And, I know many of us spend time on eBay and antique shops and looking for things like that. But again, if anything historic ever came up, we're not going to try to pry it from your hands. We would appreciate that you have it, that you've preserved it. Let us know what you've got. And really, that's all I think we would want to do from a fraternity standpoint. If there's something exceptionally historic, like, you found one of the other 6 founders badges, yeah, definitely let us know that. I think we might want to know that that's out there. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I would also say too, we are history. History Channel. They're saying, right, is history is made every day, and so I think there's things that today we don't recognize as historical, but they didn't think they would be historical in the 1940s when the chapter sent in a dance card from its chapter formal. And now the chapter gets to look back and in the chapter file, pull out that dance card from the 1940s that the headquarters has held in good stead for them for the 80 years that we've had it. Things like that are happening in the chapters. We want those sent in today so we can capture those and hold on to them for future generations of brothers to come in and enjoy down the road. So always be thinking about what do future brothers, what will they find as historical or enjoyable. And not just in PDF form, too, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap up here today. Just some closing comments. Brother Hansen, you first, and then we'll go to our current grand historian, and then we'll just round out today's event. So, Brother Hansen, some closing comments from you.
Well, again, congratulations to Sigma Chi, 169 years tomorrow. It's always very humbling. It's always very inspirational to see what our founders had put together, and then to have our timeless principles exist throughout the millennia, the way that they're the decades that we've been in existence. And I'm just very, very proud to be a Sigma Chi.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eric. Sorry, Brother Codina.
So I love our history. It probably goes without saying. I think I have the greatest job in the fraternity. My inspiration comes from all of you who share the passion of our history with me and with all Sigma Chi's. And so nothing makes me happier than to be able to answer a question that somebody might have about something or show some interesting piece of history. That's really what motivates me to continue doing what I do.
Well, we are so blessed to have both of you give so much service to Sigma Chi. And even in the years before and after your term as Grand Historian, you've given so much of your life to understanding our history, to preserving our history, and to telling that story and inspiring other minds, myself included, who've come in your footsteps and followed you on their Sigma Chi journey. So thank you for all of that, and for spending the time tonight as part of our signature series on our Learning Consortium. We are so grateful to you for being with us today on the eve of our 169th Founders Day. Brothers, I hope you will all join us tomorrow in the big celebrations that are happening. Just a quick reminder, go to sigmachi.org/Founders Day. There's a bunch of resources there for ways that you can get involved and help us celebrate 169 years of Sigma Chi. Wear your badge, fly your flag, call a buddy, get on social media and use #Founders Day. Help us spread the word to other Sigma Chi's and inspire that kind of pride and engagement we're looking for. And also, our Sigma Chi Foundation is raising money tomorrow to fund initiatives, very important initiatives for the fraternity, scholarships, leadership development programs, and even, of course, the subject du jour tonight, which is, of course, our museum and our archives. All of that is funded through contributions of our brothers. And so please, if you're able to, please make contributions to the Sigma Chi Foundation to help them reach their $169,000 goal for a fundraising initiative for 169th Founders Day. Lots of cool giveaways, including a championship belt for the chapter who raises the most money, limited edition prints and things like that are going to individual contributors who qualify at different things. And then if none of that appeals to you, get to the Sigma Chi store. There's a special limited edition Founders Day t-shirt. You can buy one there. Proceeds go to help our Sigma Chi Foundation as well. And last thing I would say to you is log into the new Sigma Chi member portal. Keep your information up to date. Big things are coming down for Sigma Chi, more just like this as we go forward. Thank you again for all of our audience for joining tonight. It's been wonderful to have you. Thank you for your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. There's so many other great questions in the chat. We'll see if we can figure out a different way to answer those. But again, thank you all for joining us. And don't forget to visit the Sigma Chi Learning Consortium. I think we're going to get a link up here soon. Watch the magic happen. That's the website for where you can see these kinds of panels that have happened in the past, and all of our future panels will pop up there on the Sigma Chi Learning Consortium, where you can learn and engage with Sigma Chi on your own time in an on-demand capacity. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We are so blessed. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Eric. Thank you all for joining. Happy Founders Day.
Thanks, Mike. See you, Eric.